I've had a lot of unpopular takes over the years, but I've never had a video quite as reviled as my negativity bomb on Shadow of the Erdtree. Rather than shirk the criticism, I read every single one of your comments. They brought to light many flaws in my video production. My intent is to share my enthusiasm for games I love, and to create a space where you can do the same. Taking a look at my video essay playlist, the last 5 videos are complaining about Shadow of the Erdtree, complaining about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, complaining about Cyberpunk 2077, complaining about Elden Ring, complaining about Marvel's Avengers. A banner job showing the joy of play. Are there aspects of these games to critique? Naturally, nothing is perfect. But did I need to make it the one-sided emphasis on my commentary? Absolutely not. It doesn't really matter if my criticisms are valid, only showering you in negative impressions creates an unpleasant outlook. When mixed with increasingly sparse uploads, a pattern is created where I crawl out of my curmudgeonly cave every few months to wax poetic about my latest hate train, fading further into obscurity each time as viewers lose faith in my ability to provide thoughtful, balanced analysis. Posting relentless one-sided criticism creates the image of a cynical, bitter asshole. It's like that friend who watches as your group raves about something they're passionate about, only to chime in with, "Actually, I found the such and such to be shallow and pedantic." That guy is insufferable. I refuse to let my content continue in the same vein. I'm returning to my mantra of emphasize passion for gaming above all, and it starts today. Believe it or not, I actually loved Shadow of the Erdtree, because it's possible for subjective flaws to be a drop in an overwhelmingly positive bucket. I want to change the bleak perception I gave by sharing everything I appreciate Elden Ring for, and along the way, we'll dispel some of my ill-conceived complaints. You are now tuning into DMod's overdue love confession for Elden Ring. I won't lie and pretend I'm some sort of art aficionado. What I can tell you is that Elden Ring's assets tickle the part of my brain that wears a monocle, puffs a pipe, and says, yes, quite, indeed. In layman's terms, the game is drop dead gorgeous. From my novice eye, Elden Ring holds a certain je ne sais quoi, an enigmatic character that breathes unique life into the lands between. Take my favorite example, Fire Giant. A massive spectacle towering over you, the ominous facial midsection, frayed braids, rusted adornments, and burns decaying its flesh. The last line of defense at the end of a path riddled with dead peers. I wondered, how was he left standing? Does it explain his wounds? His disheveled appearance suggests battle or being worn down by time, while his disturbing body strikes fear beyond his size and a morbid curiosity into the power it holds. Perhaps the key to his survival. An inclination that is answered in brutal fashion. FromSoft is a superstar at this type of visual storytelling. I don't have to be deeply connected with the accuracy of the lore. They leave gaps for you to fill in your own impressions. It's compelling to do so thanks to the strength of their art, allowing you to take an active role in world building. It makes it exciting to see more pieces fall into place during your adventure, and had me thrilled for what the DLC would present. It didn't disappoint. The Shadow Realm holds some of Elden Ring's most stunning set pieces. Brilliant blue hue of the cerulean coast, the lush paradise of Ra's ancient ruins, the tranquil peace of Marika's birthplace, the unsettling vast chasm of the Finger Ruins, beholding the majesty of Miquella's crosses, Midra's grotesque transformation, and the madness that follows. The chilling lead up to it with seemingly invincible caretakers, the crimson hue of Mesmer's Inferno, death-defying descent into Putrescent's lair, the Colosseum of Chaos where Egon screams his curse to Baal, and the breathtaking throne of a reborn lord in all its majesty. Elden Ring remains one of the most visually stunning games ever made, and it will take more than continued one-upsmanship and graphical fidelity to overcome FromSoft's masterclass in art direction. All of those aforementioned areas make up Elden Ring's sandbox in what I like to call the theme park from hell. Elden Ring has intrigue brimming around every turn. The allure creates a rewarding loop of discovery, with enough depth to sink dozens of hours into. Open world experiences are at their best when you can wander, spot a point of interest, head to it, then bump into 5 more fascinating finds before you even reach it. Shadow of the Erdtree is a shining example. Excusing a few well-hidden areas and shadow fragments, it was intuitive and enjoyable to find most of the DLC's highlights organically. The deafening expanse of Midra's bleak forest turned the intrigue loop on its head, pot dungeons added a fresh crypt that unveiled their sordid origins, and tangos with the Furnace Giants asked the ingenuity of the player to earn meaningful rewards. Thanks to the internet, if you're ever feeling stumped, you have more resources at your fingertips than you could ever need. This allows you to get as much organic exploration as you desire, and ensure you don't miss out on any vital experiences with a helping hand. Games like this force me to let go of my completionist hunger and enjoy them as theme parks. Experience the majority of attractions that appeal to you, and nod with grace toward those that exist for differing interests. Elden Ring takes the best of open world games and adds FromSoft's well-designed progression to the mix, rewarding time invested. Their tried and true execution of that progression remains one of their greatest strengths in Elden Ring. Unlike RPGs at their grindiest, there's no need to farm. In fact, I'd argue if you're a diligent explorer, you end up more than powerful enough to take on the game's hardest challenges. And yes, this is true for the DLC as well. No, it is not mandatory to get all the shadow fragments. I certainly didn't. I found them at a steady pace until I ended the Promised Consort's brief reign with 18 blessings. While I do still feel they could have tied more fragments to bosses, I concede that the updated system with early exponential scaling is more than enough to solve the problems I outlined in my previous video. It was short-sighted on my part to suggest further improvements when I hadn't even tested the update, only basing my critique on my initial playthrough completed in the first few days. I also need to admit my point about their usefulness being poorly communicated is one of the worst points I've ever argued. I personally had no issue understanding how vital they were. I base my perception off of complaints I heard in the first 48 hours when information wasn't as readily available, and the vocal minority was crying foul. Speaking for others that had their perceptions well changed by the time my video dropped, was stupid, misguided, and distracted from any worthwhile criticism I had of the system. And finally, while a select few are hidden in obtuse ways, the vast majority aren't difficult to find if you explore thoroughly, more than enough to finish the DLC comfortably with the update. Even if I'd personally weight more of their discovery toward combat encounters like the cases of Golden Hippo or Commander Gaius, there are just as many of you that prefer them tied to exploration. Both approaches are valid, and in hindsight, I'm glad both are well represented in the DLC. FromSoft found a commendable solution to a difficult problem. How to make a DLC challenging when players had endgame builds raring to go after 2 years of power scaling. In spite of my hyperbolic titles, their update is a testament that they understand how to properly provide balanced, compelling progression. The core of Elden Ring's strength over its predecessors in progression lies in the value of build diversity. Past games boasted a few de facto builds that reigned supreme well above their competition, whereas Elden Ring has dozens of quote-unquote overpowered builds. For all my bellyaching about overscaled solo difficulty, I failed to convey how many tools you have at your disposal to even those odds. That's in part due to my own rudimentary approach. I tend to stick with one build for an entire playthrough, and woefully underutilize powerful consumables. I ignored shields, meaning no guard counters or parries, and I rarely use incantations or spells. It's disingenuous of me to say Elden Ring doesn't provide you with tools to succeed in amplified combat just because I chose not to use them. Even spirit summons fall under this umbrella. They may drastically reshape encounter difficulty, but they are an intended tool. There's really no excuse not to try other builds. Elden Ring made respecs easier than ever with ties to an early game story boss. There's more smithing stones than you could ever need, runes free flow by the millions in the DLC with plenty of well-known farming spots in the base game, and infusion can be swapped on the fly thanks to Ashes of War, which are almost universally incredible and should be experimented with in equal measure. Testing out what different tools excel at can help you determine how to minimize the strength of encounters and exploit their weaknesses. Bosses across all FromSoft games have always followed this format, but Elden Ring is paralleled in its willingness to alter your approach and just how powerful it makes each of the available options feel. It's a massive success that results in greater accessibility, which is something I'm grateful for. Accessibility, or the dreaded making the game easier, has been a boogeyman in discourse surrounding FromSoft for ages. Miyazaki doesn't want to let the rewarding challenge falter, and neither do die-hard difficulty enjoyers. While I do stand by my assertion that Elden Ring has the most turbulent balance in their catalog, I can't deny that they managed to preserve high difficulty all while making the game more approachable, providing such a large array of powerful builds, letting players progress through an open world without harsh progression locks, and providing a consistent summoning system open the door for newcomers. I've had plenty of friends want to try these games, but refuse to try FromSoft's work out of fear. Yes, curated challenge is a heralded aspect of these games many of us enjoy, but there's plenty outside of testing your mettle to appreciate. Like that fantastic art design, world building, the incredible set pieces and score, compelling progression, a hellish theme park, and a rewarding sense of discovery throughout it all. Difficulty gated so many people out of enjoying these elements to the fullest, and I'm happy Elden Ring shattered that barrier. We broke through more than that. Elden Ring finally opened the vertical playing field. Aerial mobility is something I've been hoping for since the dawn of Demon's Souls. FromSoft's incredible level design may benefit from keeping players landlocked, but it was never a combat restriction I appreciated. Aerial dodges and attacks added some much needed dimension to the Dark Souls style. Some of the most satisfying openings to strike involve leaping over specific boss attacks for a jump heavy. That method was an invaluable boon for strength builds in a game that amplified enemy attack density. After falling in love with Armored Core, the sky's the limit for how far they could enhance aerial mobility. Okay, I'm not expecting them to strap a jetpack to every Tarnished, but imagine mid-air combos, an air dash, or even boot-based weaponry emphasizing Goomba stomping your adversaries. Even if that's a pipe dream, I appreciate how far FromSoft evolved your approach to combat in Elden Ring. I have an even greater appreciation for them letting us cook before the battle even begins. The wondrous system of mixing renewable buffs and custom concoctions is a fantastic concept. Its value is driven by the open world, rewarding you for hunting down Erdtree avatars and furnace giants to expand your mixology. They managed to pack all the value of build diversity down to a single remixable flask. In similar fashion, there are so many worthwhile tiers to experiment with that there's never a de facto meta option. Whatever you choose will be such a boon it can outright define your combat approach. I would love to see another game lean even further into this concept. Imagine an entire apothecary worth of flasks with variable charges that offer buffs to you, debuffs to enemies, or even affect the world around you. How would you utilize a flask that requires 5 uninterrupted seconds to chug for a 50% debuff to enemy speed for 10 seconds? Finding the proper window to use it and the most potent offense to unleash upon its success would require a depth understanding of an encounter and pooling your resources to make the most of your earned opening. What about a flask that allows you to temporarily rally any damage done to an enemy, but halves your defense for the duration? Or a flask that doubles your defense, but halves your movement speed? Give me Witcher-style combat prep and a combat system that takes full advantage. Perhaps this idea would be horribly balanced and no fun at all in practice, but let a man dream. Fortunately, it's already close to reality with how wondrous Elden Ring's physics truly is. It is a perfect example of those tools the game provides to deal with Elden Ring's unprecedented attack frequency. While it's a point I harped on in the previous video, I failed to acknowledge how this can be a positive. From the wondrous physics providing diverse buffs, shields that nullify damage outright, hyper armor ashes that let you soak damage to dish it out tenfold in return, the game allows you to play as safe or as aggressive as you like. It's engaging trying to find an approach that works best for each encounter. On the more unga bunga end, for all my bluster about Bloodborne letting you joust at high speeds thanks to the rally system, being relentless in Elden Ring pays off with a little strategy and skill to back your advance. Take my defeat of the Promised Consort. Through my 38 attempts to seize victory, I mastered the first phase. In doing so, I realized that if I refrained from using heavy attacks, instead layering on light blows between patient evasion, I would build a high stagger threshold that carried into phase 2. This gave me consistent posture breaks to start, a massive boon to stack bleed and chop down the total HP I'd actually be dealing with. From here, I regularly saw Radahn use the floating AoE blast in his first few moves. This long animation was perfect to buff poise damage and stamina regen with my physics. From here, it was a matter of dodging and healing well enough to live, while sneaking in timely Savage Claws to break and bleed my way to the finish line. When I succeeded, it wasn't thanks to flawless execution on my end. I made plenty of blunders, like continuing to roll backward in an attempt to get spacing when Radahn practically begs you to roll in and evade the magic effects. What I did accomplish was being good enough. And damn if that didn't feel amazing. I was rewarded for a near-perfect first phase with an early stun. My dodges, while imperfect, were timed well enough to evade death, and while my uses of Lion's Claw appear greedy, they were deliberate exchanges of damage I was confident I could recover from, while Radahn's health only dwindled. I decided to use my health bar as a resource that only needed to exist above 1 HP. I chose to trade damage on less potent attacks, dodge the more lethal blows, and squeeze out healing windows wherever I could. Executing this loop efficiently was every part as thrilling as my favorite clashes from Bloodborne, Sekiro, and Dark Souls. When it comes down to it, there doesn't need to be some perfect clean answer to every boss mechanic. Sometimes you just need to make the best of a tricky situation. That's every bit as important of a skill as being able to go Ultra Instinct and dodge everything. Elden Ring bosses more than ever push you to the limits of preparation, strategy, and execution. It's for that reason that I love them. Yes, despite both of my videos critiquing boss design that would suggest otherwise, I can identify subjective annoyances and still enjoy them wholeheartedly in spite of them. I love Rellana's elegant moveset, contrasted well by her bombastic and desperate lunar meltdown. I love the way Mesmer strings combo routes together, repositions wildly, forcing you to respond, yet always leaves fair openings at the end. I love summoning Egon to serenade us with expletives as we channel our inner monster hunter against Bale. I love how the frenetic pace of Midra's battle embodies the essence of madness. I love how Putrescent Night lives up to its rotten name in every way. I love Dancing Lion's Chinese festival inspiration, and the elemental phases that add meaningful flavor to every moment. I love the more moderate tempo of Ramina's fight, lulling you into false senses of security when she's every bit as poisonous as her peers. I love the multi-phase approach to Shadow Tree Avatar, with more chaotic moves added with each round. I love how Gaius tramples all over you whether you like it or not, because by God that charge has a hitbox bigger than Limgrave. I love how the demons of FromSoft responsible for Finger Creepers somehow managed to one-up themselves with me-tier Mother of Nightmare fuel. I love watching prequel Yoda run circles around me. I love Pinwheel's design being done justice in an optional dungeon. And yes, I love Promise Consort Radahn. The first phase is peak Night Fight, while the second pushes me to the brink of my love for battles of attrition. I have more to say, but we'll save that for another day. My ranking of the Shadow of the Erdtree bosses is coming later this week. In the meantime, I hope this video was a nice palate cleanser. I said it at the outset, and I'll say it again. I want to share my passion for games in an entertaining and fun way that encourages you to do the same. Cheers to more content that embodies that mantra on the horizon.